First of all, I'm actually no stranger to moving or living overseas, having done that 7 times in my adult life. Could say that I was mostly comfortable being a citizen of the world, which all affected my morale and personal life and the productivity at work. See, the frequent but short international travel on business, such as a few days to a couple of weeks at most, are probably easiest on the family. Better financial value for the company, but hardest on the individual personally because of the frequent travel and physical requirements thereof. Short-term relocation, I call it, as up to 2 to 3 years, maybe 4 years, could be with or without the family, depending on the proximity of the assignment to the home country. For these reasons, having a service like Better Go would make a difference and a positive impact on the employment assignment and experience, employees assignment and experience. Competent mentors would enable faster settling in, and better retention, overall cost reduction, stress relief, time for employee to focus on the company's project mission rather than trying to get things done sorted at home all by themselves.
Mark, welcome. It's a great opportunity to talk together.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. Thanks for that opportunity.
So the first question we'd love to begin with is every expat has a story to tell, and you've been on several assignments and several journeys. So let's begin with your expatriate journey. Where was your first assignment, and how do you think it shaped your pathway forward in your career?
Thanks, Michael. First of all, I'm actually no stranger to moving or living overseas, having done that 7 times in my adult life, starting with schooling in the UK and then living with family in France, and starting my work life in USA after my master's in Illinois. So one could say that I was mostly comfortable being a citizen of the world. My first overseas assignment, though, was from USA to Germany, initially on a 3-month project basis. That later on led to a full-time expat position being offered to work as a product manager at one of my US employers' factories in southern Germany. At that time, I was single, and the physical move from Chicago to Germany was fairly smooth. However, I can't say the same thing for the initial settlement process, which could have been managed much better by the local receiving entity HR department. This was the first time, in fact, I witnessed the disconnect between and the lack of real life experience by both the corporate and hosting HR departments, finding the right flat and the right company per the company budget, company car for the company budget, and arranging private tutoring for language classes, or even getting a local driver's license were all challenges I faced a lot more than I should have, which all affected my morale and personal life and the productivity at work. Employers with hopes of rapid integration and results should not necessarily shy away from investing early to avoid consequential business costs later as a result of increased transition time. After 3 years there, I carried on to another expat assignment in my home country, Turkey. And although this went somewhat smoother, similar problems with promises and expectations versus the real life experience marked the necessity of the employee's need to be intensely involved with the process. I switched later to a German employer in Turkey first, which gave me the opportunity in short period to have parallel assignments in Dubai covering all of Middle East region on an interim basis for a year, and later in India for a year and a half. Both assignments were short term, and I was stationed in the foreign country for 2 to 3 weeks at a time every month, primarily living out of hotel or temporary housing. I was married then with children, and assignments being short term, it made more sense to leave the family back home while I was shuttling back and forth and globetrotting with other business travel. Later, I was managing a region of some 80 plus countries in the EMEA region, with home base in Istanbul, but traveling 2/3 of the year. During the COVID period, I had another opportunity with a Finnish company to move to Helsinki as a C-level executive. However, due to misaligned expectations and financial reasons, the assignment was short-lived. We had sold off all our belongings to permanently move to Finland, but just before the family could join me, the assignment was terminated in 4 months. And my final move was back to USA, repatriating now with another company. As they were much smaller and did not have a global HR department, I practically had to do everything on my own, from arranging the overseas move to accommodation to schooling. By now, I had decades of experience of global moves, and USA is naturally a lot easier to assimilate into.
Out of all these experiences that you had, Mark, several different countries and really different cultures. I mean, going from Finland, from the Middle East into Turkey, what are some memorable stories that you might have from these journeys that either could be funny memories or kind of life lessons that you learned along the way?
Yeah, one strikes me first. Whilst I was stationed in India, we went to a local restaurant with the whole office team. We were about 15 or so, but strangely separated into two tables, which ideally could have been pushed or joined together. At first, I tried talking to waiters to join the tables or invited others from neighboring table to empty seats at ours. However, my local sales manager quickly warned me that the tables were split on purpose according to eating habits, vegetarian and non-vegetarian. And in their culture, the vegetarians would not sit at a non-veg table due to spiritual beliefs. This was an eye-opener for me as a Westerner as to how different belief systems play a role in local acceptance and integration. I would say most of the interesting cultural experiences were gained in the Middle East and South Asia assignments. There are just too many to mention here. But there are also very subtle cultural differences between US and European work and life practices and habits. You can't, for instance, be toasting a glass and not look into the eyes of your counterpart in Germany, for example. It is considered very rude or demeaning. Similarly, in Far East, if your local colleagues catches your eyes and asks for a toast, you need to physically stand up and do a bottoms up with them out of respect, regardless of how heavy the liquor content might be. And that's several times at a dinner table with multiple colleagues' challenges.
Absolutely. I've had my fair share of in Far East Asia and Chinese weddings, particularly where you don't have a choice or annual banquets, and those are always very interesting aspects to
Absolutely.
manage.
You have a hard time waking up next morning, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. If you make it to the morning.
Yeah.
So some of these assignments that you've been on, they've been quite different, right? When you're talking about going into Helsinki, it sounded like it was more permanent basis. You were selling everything off, you were ready to go. In the mobility world, we do have several different types of expatriate assignments. Some are short-term or business trips, usually anywhere between 2 to 3 weeks at a pop, and they can be throughout the year. Or you'd have kind of midterm assignments, which they're either 1 or 2 years in length. And in terms of that kind of living style and status, you're more into temp accommodation. It's not quite really settling into the area, but you're still a bit of a transient position there. And then a 4 year assignment is a little bit more long term, where you'll bring your whole family and all that kind of stuff. And finally, the last type that we typically have is what sounded like you were going to Finland, was a permanent move, where it's the job moves you to a certain location, you bring the whole family, and there's not necessarily a plan for getting you out of the country. It's this is where it is for now, and you make the best of what you got. So out of those types of different assignments, whether it's a short-term business travel, whether it's a kind of medium to long-term 4 year assignment, or even a permanent move, how do you think that affects families, yourself, as in terms of career development? And maybe in your opinion, what are some that you might prefer as optional for employees in the future?
Well, just to evaluate all of the different options, obviously the frequent but short international travel on business, such as a few days to a couple of weeks at most, are probably easiest on the family. Better financial value for the company, but hardest on the individual personally because of the frequent travel and physical requirements thereof. Short-term relocation, I call it, as up to 2 to 3 years, maybe 4 years, could be with or without the family, depending on the proximity of the assignment to the home country. This is somewhat easier for the employee and probably best value for the company, not bearing the full relocation, expatriation costs, nor the frequent flight costs. If the family moves with, however, the period is simply too short for them to assimilate into the culture, language, society, or the schooling system, for example. The permanent moves, on the other hand, are much rare and are usually not planned that way. I would say they start off out as a 2 to 4 year assignments, but if both sides are happy and so is the family, the assignments would then be extended or turned into permanent ones. This is probably the best outcome for all stakeholders, except for the company maybe having lost a flexible globetrotter who might be no longer an option open to other assignments. So I think then he's based there, and he or she is based there, and obviously that's the end of it. They cannot move him to other assignments. But from a personal perspective, I certainly did enjoy the 2 to 3 year assignments, and it just gives you another chance to look at other opportunities and other cultures. Is probably the best value for the company as well.
So at Better Go, as you know, we focus on providing certified life coaches and mentors to expats like yourself on assignment. Do you think that has a place in these different types of assignments? And if so, how do you think it could be a positive impact on the lives of people that are going for employment around the world?
Definitely. I mentioned some of the challenges faced by the employee in the initial phases of the foreign assignment. The host country may not always be easy, straightforward, or even friendly, as for example, Germany. It could be a remote location in Africa, depending on the needs of the business. The HR departments may have little prior experience or even a clue in certain geographies. In such cases, the existence and the continued assistance throughout the process of a mobility mentor, well adapted in that country or culture, would make a tremendous contribution to the success of the assignment, both for the employer and the employee and their families.
And based on your experience from all these assignments, what kind of advice would you give to someone if they were in the middle of their career or they were given an opportunity to go on their first international assignment? What could they do differently to get the best out of the experience, make the most of it, and make sure that it was a successful experience for them and their family?
I would start off by advising that the employees do their initial and intensive research themselves or due diligence about the country, culture, work, and social climate at the host location, irrespective of what the employers offer. The financial and the career prospects are important, but are never more important than an unsatisfactory experience by the employee or their families. So the employees should not rely and take it granted that all will be taken care of or sorted by their HR departments. This is a myth and not the reality. Equally important is for employers to understand that they cannot afford to rule out outsourced professional services, especially when they do not have the in-house competence or experience. The potential savings by not investing early into the assignment process will often be outdone and surpassed by the consequent business and personal costs associated with an unsmooth or failing assignment process. For these reasons, having a service like Better Go would make a difference in the positive impact on the employment assignment and experience, employers assignment and experience. Competent mentors would enable faster settling in, and better retention, overall cost reduction, stress relief, time for employee to focus on the company's project mission rather than trying to get things done sorted at home all by themselves. They would not feel like they are left out or alone by their employers, and that the company actually values the personal sacrifice employee is making on this mission. It is hard, if not impossible, for behind the desk HR specialists with only a few years of experience to assist in the complex needs of the assignment and come out with positive results. However, in most small to medium enterprises, this is important, and in this important new chapter in people's lives is often left to the hands of some junior associates that are kind of detached from the realities in the field. So the actual experience is a lot different than people might expect initially, and this could be kind of smoothened with the involvement of professionals, like in the case of Bergo.
So a little bit off script and a bonus question for you, Mark. What's next? How many assignments are you up to now? I think if I counted correctly, there was 5 assignments that you've been on
Yeah,
internationally.
that's true. 5 or 6, I've stopped counting, but I think what's going to be next for me, I'm doing my own LLC work right now, and I'm trying to bring in new products and services. I have different ideas as to which way I could go. It's a bit of a soul searching period. I think I will be stationed in the U.S. for probably a couple more years, unless things work out differently, but it could be longer. But I have, again, the mainland Europe in mind, probably Germany for service oriented work, more like bringing employees from different countries into an electronic installation environment where the end users are definitely putting out lots of projects, then can be serviced by the local talent pool. So that's a service that I've been working on, and if that works out, and I think it will be in the next few months, it's going to be clear when we start the first projects. And if it results into something economically viable, I could see myself moving back into Europe, possibly to Germany.
It's wonderful. It sounds like that's a great adventure for you in the future as well. There's no place that you can't go to make it like home. That's what it sounds like to me, actually.
Yes, I mean, I think it might be a little too late for some of the wilder countries that Far East or Africa, but a little more, I wouldn't say civilized, but easier for the family to adapt to locations are always in question.
I totally understand. I find that with myself as well, wishing that maybe I was a little bit more adventurous when I was younger, because when you're younger and you've got the backpack and you're ready to go, it's whether it's South Africa or it's the Middle East or wherever or some far-flung area, it's fine, it's okay. And now after having a family and being settled down, you might think about these things two, 3, 4, 5 times
Yeah,
over.
you don't think
And
just
that's
for yourself now. It's the whole
yeah,
package you have to evaluate. Yeah, but
exactly.
there's no right age, to be honest with you. There's no limit to what you can do. Okay, if you're like 70 plus, then that's really, you're probably not even working at that time. But do people do take those make those decisions to have a change of life? Sometimes they move, even when they're retired, they move to a totally different island somewhere in the Pacific. And I'm not just talking Hawaii. They could be moving to Fiji or Thailand or someplace that's exotic, and it's just a personal preference, I would say, and how experienced you are, it makes a difference. I mean, because if you can't see what's in there and what's waiting for you, it's always scary. But if you've done it a few times, it becomes like, okay, what's the big deal? We'll get by, and we'll
Survived it before I can do it again.
survive it. Yeah, exactly.
I like that what you mentioned too. Previously when you're talking about the assignment, a lot of times it's because it's so maybe perhaps you can use the word ambiguous. When you're going to a new place, there's a lot of anxiety. You've never maybe you had a pre-visit trip if you're lucky, but most often you're doing online research and you never kind of experienced it firsthand. So you may be more a little bit reliant on other people managing the process and taking care of things. But I do really like what you said is that those of us who do get to go on assignments need to understand that there's a certain level of independence and responsibility that you have to take for yourself and for your family and fill that void. Where if you're missing support or if there's not exactly a great connection into the location that you're moving to, you've got to make the best of it. And your company is actually relying on you to do that, to take that gumption and leadership and responsibility. I've never thought of it that way, but I like that. That's a good
Sure.
perspective.
I'd like to add something onto that, because you mentioned about, obviously this research, initial online research and everything, that's just breaking the ice, so to say. But if there has been precedents, and if there have been other expatriates or assignments into that country, it's always good to have sharing experiences and getting in touch with those people that may still be there or have done that in the past, and see what their experiences are. But what I've often encountered is that every journey is unique, every experience is different. I mean, every person or family has a different expectation and or experience thereof. Some might be very flexible in terms of how they adapt, and some could be very rigid, and that makes the difference between success and failure of that particular assignment or that particular family. So I always think that it's always good to collect as much information as possible from all constituents and people who have had that experience, also from the company, from your own perspective. You might know somebody who's local there in that particular country. You may have a connection there, get their opinion. Obviously, that's going to be locally biased, but put it all together in a big pot, and then make your own decision eventually if that's a good prospect for you. And the more you do it, the better you understand the finer details that you have to pay attention to before accepting the position. And I think it makes life easier. But again, there are some countries, they could send you to, or there might be an opportunity that there have been absolutely no prior experience, and that's really difficult for both sides.
Absolutely. And staying connected into those communities is a really important aspect, because it's not only just like you were saying, the information, but the support network, the friendships, the connections that you have. Some days will be great. Some days are found not to be great. And it's good to have a network around you that can support you through those.
And
Well,
whilst
Mark,
there, sorry, just to finish off, whilst you're there, it's always important to really experience the local culture. Not necessarily, if you're from one country, let's say you're an American, not necessarily hang out with the American expats all the time. Submerge yourself, delve into, deep dive into the culture itself, experience the language, go out and make friends, local friends, and live the moment. Absolutely important. Otherwise, it's not going to be an easy ride. It's always good to submerge yourself into the local culture as much as you can.
there are some ways you can do that. I think food is often one of the ones, like to go try things and experiences is a common one that's on a bucket list. But what are some other creative ideas that will get you out there beyond because we all are creatures of habit, right? We're going to stay in our networks, and even perhaps our international colleagues or American expats or British expats, etc. What are some ways that you found that are helpful? Is it sport? Is it hobby?
Yeah.
What kind of things
It's
do you think would be a good
it's
idea?
usually sports and hobbies, extracurricular activities, basically what people do in that particular culture. If you're in Austria, you have to go hiking, you have to go hiking or skiing. And I mean, even if you haven't done that, to be a part of that clique or that local community, you got to start. And if you're in India, for instance, you have to enjoy the local cuisine, the dances and the festivals and the holidays, and you have to be a part of that. You have to throw those colorful pigments up in the air and then be seen as a local. I mean, you're never 100% local, but at least your genuine effort to be trying goes a long way in terms of them accepting you and you feeling more comfortable. So definitely culture, food, drinking, sports, activities, outside activities, they all play a role. Clearly, there are different work habits, maybe in the work environment, in the office environment, and you need to be mindful of those too.
Fantastic. Mark, it's truly been an enlightening experience to talk to you about your experiences around the world, the lessons that you've learned, and how you've navigated these complexities. Global mobility is such a unique aspect of the career world, but it's wonderful to have your insights into what it looks like living on the ground in these locations. To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, Betigo is here to support your relocation journey with our experienced mobility mentors around the world. Stay connected for more stories and insights from the Beyond Borders podcast, and looking forward to seeing you all on our next episode. Thank you so much, Mark. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you, Michael. Have a good day.